Welcome to Viewpoints. My name's Ross Elliott. With me today is Sara Diaz. Sara is the Emerging Technologies Manager for the San Diego Fire and Rescue Department, San Diego, California. She's just finishing her master's program and has written a thesis entitled, "Where Do I Start? Decision-Making in Complex Novel Environments." Well, Sara, in your job as the Emerging Technologies Manager, you're the link between operational and the technical side. Is this what your thesis is about?
In some ways, yes, but actually where my thesis topic came from was a conversation that I had with one of my chiefs on the way to a meeting. We were talking about how with the layoffs and the retirements and a lot of things going on in San Diego, how a lot of institutional knowledge was going out the door. Our new captains and chiefs are relatively new in the field. They're younger, they're a little bit less experienced, and there's some concern that if a large-scale incident were to happen, do we know what to do? And so that triggered some ideas for me, and what I decided to look at is what really should we do and how can we prepare our people even in a scenario that we haven't yet envisioned. So we're looking at the 9/11s, the huge disasters, large-scale terrorism events, things that we don't have a plan for. And what I was trying to understand was, are there things that we can do and tools that we can give them to help walk through those incidents and try and get from chaos to complexity and back into something that they know and have experience and can manage.
Interesting. Now, how did you go about studying this? What kind of methodology did you use to find your answer?
I used grounded theory, which is a little bit different. The idea is you don't know the answer and you're not testing a hypothesis going in. You literally go in with an idea and you search for a solution. Part of that is research-based, going and doing detailed literature reviews and seeing what other people have done and what ideas are out there. The other side of it is looking at things from an operational point of view, talking to people, and seeing if in these conversations, if there's some common themes that evolve. So I did interview. I interviewed about 9 people, police and firefighters, most of them in the San Diego region, but not all. And what I found was there was some ideas of complexity theory coming up, and there were some key areas in decision-making, specifically recognition prime decision-making, that really resonated with this group. And when they had been in novel and extremely complex situations in the past, they had drawn on both of those concepts without even knowing it. So as part of grounded theory, it was just looking for those common concepts and seeing if you could build a hypothesis to present and go forward with.
Were there any surprises that you found as you uncovered this information? Were there any surprises?
Well, I didn't know the answer going in, quite honestly. A lot of times when you start something like this, you have an idea and you're trying to prove it. I didn't have the answer. What really surprised me was how common the experiences were despite the disciplines. You know, in the end, police and fire do their work very differently, and yet a lot of these themes still evolved. And in the end, if you looked at the data, you couldn't tell if it had come from a policeman or a fireman. It's people out there working through problems in the same way, no matter what their discipline and their history was.
You talk about the common themes. Can you share with us what some of those were?
Well, really what I found was that there was drawing on past experiences and slides and seeing if they fit, ideas of group decision-making, coming together and trying out and seeing what others had done and seeing if that would work in this case. On the complexity side, it was trying to identify what was out there and looking for a broader perspective, really see what was going on and see how they could curtail the things that were going wrong and expand upon the things that were going right. So they were out there and testing and really being risk takers. The good leaders were able to go out there and not be afraid that this might fail. And in fact, if something failed, one of their tactics, that was a lesson learned and something right then and there that they could adjust and move forward with, and not look at it as a failure, but look at it as one more piece of the puzzle that they now understand a little bit more than they did even a couple hours ago.
So what were the conclusions? We've got to get to the answer here that we're leading up to it. It sounds fascinating.
So what I did in my thesis was develop a model. I call it the exploration and exploitation decision model. And what it's based on is Gary Klein has an idea of recognition prime decision making. And I found that that was very appropriate in times where you wanted to exploit or use again tactics that you've used in the past. What Klein says is go back to slides and memories of what's worked in the past, and you go through them, you find the one that works, the first one you find that will work, implement it, try it. That is the case even in a truly complex or chaotic situation. There are still some tactics that may work and they may not solve the entire incident, but they may work you back more towards a controllable or a knowable situation. If you don't have things where you can exploit, then you go into explore. And what the explore side says is, okay, I've run out of things that are familiar. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to categorize and look at what's around me. I'm going to see what is in my environment, what's interacting, and how often they're interacting, and see if I can manipulate those variables. So if I've got a mob scene and I see that people are throwing things and converging on policemen, I'm going to try and isolate people and try and separate them to keep the bad things that are going on from getting worse, and see if I can start moving things towards a better pattern. Either way, they come back through, either if you're going through exploitation or exploration, you go back through, you do a quick mental simulation, kind of think it through, see if you can identify some pitfalls, but you won't know how this is going to come out in a truly complex situation. So what you do instead is you try it, see if it works, cycle back through, and if it's working, do it some more. If it's not working, start trying some new things. So part of this is permission to not always be perfect, that there is value in trying things. If they don't work, manipulating the plan, but really using the environment and what's around you, as well as your past experiences and those around you with wider perspectives to make those decisions and try and get a chaotic or a complex situation under control.
Now, how do you implement this? How do you envision it actually being carried out? Is there training involved? How do we see it work on the streets?
I'm pretty lucky. San Diego Fire Rescue has a pretty strong training program. They also have a leadership committee, and in talking with my chiefs, I think that's where we're going to start, is we have a group of people that are identified as potential and future leaders. And they meet regularly, they have reading lists that they work through, and they look at some of the issues that are going on at the department. They're almost entirely operations. They are captains and chiefs and engineers and people that are out in the field doing the work every day, but are fostering their leadership skills. And I think that's where we're going to start, is throwing this into the mix. As part of our regular curriculum for the leadership group and our leadership academy, they learn a lot about Gary Klein and recognition prime decision making. What they don't learn is what to do when you don't have a slide. So we actually think it'll transition very well into that, is, okay, you've learned about this, now let's look at when you apply it and what to do when it doesn't apply. So we think it'll transition pretty nicely.
Terrific. So how does this contribute to Homeland Security? How does it make San Diego safer?
Well, I'm a firm believer in plans and preparation, but I'm also a firm believer that we can't have a plan for everything. And our adversaries are constantly thinking of new ways to attack us, and we need to be ready for the things that we haven't envisioned. So a plan is good where you can envision it and you can work through the problem in advance. Where my model comes in handy is for the ones that we haven't yet thought of. And what I'd like to see is Homeland Security start thinking a whole lot more, not fight yesterday's war, but fight tomorrow's war. And I think this is moving that in that direction of looking forward and not roping ourselves into scenarios that have already happened, because they rarely happen again in the same way. I'd like people to be prepared for the next thing that we haven't thought of.
Sara, thank you so much for your contributions to Homeland Security.
Thank you for having me.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.